Commander Vashtal, a creature of formidable might with 4 muscular arms ending in razor-sharp claws, stretched in satisfaction. His crimson eyes, gleaming with the thrill of countless hunts, swept across the trophy wall of his command ship. It was a macabre collection, a testament to his guild's dominance: the crystalline heart of a fallen Thylorian beast, the armored skull of a defeated Nexus war chief, and his personal favorite, the still-pulsing neural cluster of a void stalker. Another dull cycle in the outer rim, he rumbled, his voice a low growl that had sent entire star systems scattering in fear. The Cthrax Hunting Guild, a name synonymous with terror across the galaxy, found little challenge these days. Most civilizations simply fled at the mere detection of their bioships. It was, to Vashtal, utterly disappointing. His lieutenant, Tor Gash, a scarred veteran whose serpentine lower body allowed him to glide with unsettling silence, slithered into the command chamber. "Commander, we've received another surrender transmission from the Polaris colonies. They're offering tribute again." Vashtal's mandibles clicked in a clear display of irritation. Tribute? Tribute. He slammed a primary fist onto the control console, the organic surface groaning and cracking under the impact. "We are the apex predators of this galaxy, Tor Gash, not some common pirates collecting taxes. We hunt for the thrill, for the challenge, for the pure ecstasy of the kill." "Of course, Commander," Tor Gash replied smoothly, his voice carefully neutral. "But perhaps we should consider, there are rumors of a new species in the Sol system. They call themselves humans." This piqued Vashtal's interest. His 4 eyes locked onto his subordinate. "Humans? What kind of pathetic name is that? Are they warriors? Do they possess natural weapons, impenetrable armor plating, or poisonous blood?" Tor Gash consulted his bioscanner, a faint tremor running through his serpentine body, as if trying to suppress a chuckle. "According to our deep space reconnaissance, they appear to be, well, Commander, they're incredibly weak. Soft pink skin, no natural weapons, no armor, no fangs, no claws. They can't even see in the dark properly. They're basically walking meat sacks." For the first time in what felt like cycles, genuine excitement flickered in the commander's eyes. "Soft? No weapons? No armor?" He began to pace, his claws clicking a rhythmic, predatory beat against the floor. "This is perfect. Finally, a species that might actually run instead of surrendering immediately. They do seem to have some primitive technology," Tor Gash continued, "but nothing compared to our bioweapons. Their fastest ships are slower than our scout vessels. Their weapons are crude projectile throwers. And get this, Commander, they actually need to sleep for 8 hours every cycle." Vashtal threw back his head and unleashed a bone-chilling roar of laughter that echoed through the command chamber. "They sleep for 8 hours? While completely unconscious?" He wiped a tear from one of his eyes. "Oh, this is going to be the most entertaining hunt in generations." The commander moved to his tactical display, where a small, blue-green planet rotated slowly. "Look at it, Tor Gash. So peaceful, so blissfully unaware. They probably don't even know we exist." He traced a claw along the planet's surface. "Set course for Earth. It's time the Cthrax reminded the galaxy why we're the apex predators." "Should we bring the full battle fleet, Commander?" Tor Gash inquired cautiously. "For these humans?" Vashtal chuckled darkly, a sound like grinding stone. 3 ships should be more than enough. We wouldn't want to accidentally wipe them out before we get to enjoy ourselves." Meanwhile, on Earth, Scout Captain Mordek crouched behind a cluster of dense human vegetation, his advanced camouflage suit making him virtually invisible to the planet's primitive sensors. Through his bio-enhanced optical organs, he observed what the humans laughably called a city. The structures were so fragile, lacking any organic armor or defensive spines, just crude rectangles of stone and metal that would crumble under a single plasma blast. "Pathetic," he whispered into his comm unit. "Commander, you should see this. Their buildings have transparent sections everywhere. Transparent. They've literally created structures you can see through. It's like they want to be hunted. His attention shifted to a group of humans strolling along what they called a sidewalk. The creatures moved so slowly, completely oblivious to their surroundings. There was no scanning for threats, no defensive posturing, no instinctive pack formation. One of them was even staring intently at a small rectangular device instead of watching for predators. But then, something truly bizarre happened. A small human, barely reaching the adult's waist, suddenly began making the most horrifying noise Mordek had ever heard. A high-pitched wailing erupted from the tiny creature, as water leaked from its optical organs. "By the void," Mordek muttered, utterly confused by this display. It was a sound of pure distress, yet there was no immediate threat. No predator, no crumbling building, just a human adult attempting to soothe the distressed small human. This was unlike anything the Kthrax had ever encountered. The creatures were truly perplexing in their apparent vulnerability and strange behaviors. The Kthrax scouts, scattered across the globe, continued to send back reports that filled Commander Vashtal with an intoxicating mix of amusement and anticipation. The humans were even more helpless than the initial scan suggested. They had no natural defenses, and their society was built on a foundation of blissful ignorance. They seemed completely preoccupied with trivial matters, from staring at glowing devices to moving small, colorful objects around on flat surfaces for what they called games. The Kthrax hunters, hardened by eons of galactic combat, found it all utterly bewildering. This was less of a hunt and more of a harvest. Vashtal couldn't wait any longer. He ordered the 3 bioships to begin their descent. He chose a major city as the first target, a sprawling urban center in what the humans called Japan. The plan was simple: unleash a single Kthrax patrol to sow chaos and observe the humans' pitiful attempts to defend themselves. He imagined their panicked screams, their fruitless attempts to flee, and their eventual, inevitable surrender. The thought made his mandibles quiver with delight. The patrol was led by Tor Gash, the veteran lieutenant who had first reported on the humans. He took 5 of the finest hunters, their chameleon-like skin shifting to blend with the urban landscape. As their scout ship hovered silently in the atmosphere, Tor Gash looked at the city below, a fragile web of light and steel. "Commander, the humans' primitive surveillance systems have detected our presence. They're calling it an unidentified object. Vashtal laughed, a low, rumbling sound. "An unidentified object. They have no concept of a threat of this magnitude. Let them be curious, Lieutenant. It will make the spectacle more delicious." The patrol descended, cloaked in an electromagnetic field that made them invisible to the human eye. They landed on a rooftop, their heavy footsteps barely making a sound. Below, the city buzzed with the life of 1,000 tiny, unsuspecting creatures. The first hunter, a brutish Kthrax named Vorik, aimed his plasma rifle at a large glass building. "Shall I begin the hunt, Commander?" he buzzed into his comm unit. "Not yet," Vashtal commanded. "We must first observe their reaction to fear. Find a small group, isolate them, and simply reveal yourselves. I want to see them run." The patrol moved with predatory grace, leaping from rooftop to rooftop. They located a small park where a group of humans was gathered. Tor Gash gave the signal, and the 6 Kthrax deactivated their cloaking fields. A wave of gasps and screams rippled through the group. The humans stared, their faces a mixture of confusion and terror, at the sight of the 6-limbed, crimson-eyed creatures. This was it. The moment of panic. The glorious chase. But, they didn't run. Instead of scattering, a single human, a small male with what they called gray hair, stepped forward. He held up his hands in a gesture of peace and began making strange noises. "Don't be afraid," he said, in a language the Kthrax's universal translator barely comprehended. "We mean you no harm. We are scientists." The Kthrax patrol was taken aback. Torgash signaled a halt. "Commander, they are not running. They are communicating. They think we are scientists." On the command ship, Vashtel's amusement turned to confusion. Scientists? What kind of species thinks a hunting guild is a scientific expedition? This is not the reaction I was expecting. But then, the human's demeanor changed. The peaceful tone vanished, replaced by a sudden, fierce anger. You shot my dog," the human said, pointing to the spot where a small, furry creature lay motionless. One of the younger Kthrax hunters, having grown bored of the wait, had fired a low-power stun blast at the animal just for the sport of it. The Kthrax patrol, standing there in their massive armored glory, suddenly saw something in the human's eyes that was far more chilling than any roar of a void stalker. It wasn't fear. It was pure, unadulterated rage. The human let out a sound that was a low growl of his own, and from a nearby backpack, he pulled out a small, metallic object. Before the Kthrax could react, a loud crack echoed through the air, and one of their hunters, a hulking brute named Kral, collapsed, a small hole burned clean through his armored chest plate. The universal translator on Torgash's helmet went haywire. It was trying to process the concept of a gun. The scout reports had labeled them as crude projectile throwers, but this was no mere rock-slinging device. This was a weapon designed for one purpose: to kill. The other humans, seeing the effect of the first shot, pulled out similar devices and aimed them at the Kthrax. The Kthrax, who had never seen a species with no natural defenses create such a lethal weapon, were momentarily paralyzed with shock. "Commander," Torgash's voice crackled with a new urgency. "They have powerful weapons. They are not as helpless as we thought. We are under attack." Vashtel stared at the tactical display, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. A single, soft-skinned human had just taken down one of his best hunters with a tiny device that looked like it belonged in a child's toy chest. "Retrieve the body," he commanded, his voice now a low, dangerous rumble. "And bring me that weapon. I need to understand what just happened." The hunt was no longer a game. The prey was not running. The prey was fighting back, and a curious discovery had just been made: humans were a species that had evolved to kill not with claws and fangs, but with ingenuity and a terrifying rage when their own were harmed. The retreat of the Kthrax patrol was a moment of profound humiliation for Commander Vashtel. The great apex predators of the galaxy, the feared hunting guild, had been driven back by a small group of what they had mockingly called walking meat sacks. He glared at the smoldering hole in Kral's armor plating, a testament to the human's unexpected lethality. The scout reports were wrong. The humans were not weak. They were something far more dangerous, unpredictable. Torgash returned with Kral's body and, more importantly, the small metallic device the humans had used. Vashtel picked it up with a single claw, his other 3 hands examining it from all angles. It was simple in its design, lacking any of the organic complexity of Kthrax bioweapons. It was just a cold, hard piece of metal. And yet, it had been a perfect killing machine. They created this? Vashtel asked, his voice a low growl of disbelief. A species with no natural defenses created a weapon so efficient at killing others? "Commander, we have also discovered a strange behavior," Torgash reported, his voice tinged with a new respect for the humans. "When one of their kind is harmed, the others do not flee. They become incredibly aggressive. They will sacrifice themselves to protect their pack. It's a behavior we have never seen in any other species. Most prey species scatter when a member is culled." Vashtel's mind, a tactical computer honed by 1,000 hunts, began to process this new information. Other species were driven by instinct. The humans, it seemed, were driven by something else. A complex web of emotions and bonds that made them unpredictable and dangerous. The hunt was no longer a simple matter of strength and speed. It had become a puzzle. A challenge he hadn't faced in cycles. He reviewed the initial reports, looking for clues he had previously dismissed. The humans stared at glowing rectangles. They spent countless hours building intricate structures of stone and metal. They even created complex narratives and art. These weren't signs of a primitive, helpless species. These were signs of a species with a highly developed mind. A mind that could analyze, strategize, and create. The commander turned to his tactical display and ordered a full analysis of human culture and technology. He needed to understand them on a deeper level. The Cthrax had always relied on brute force and their superior technology, but against the humans, that might not be enough. He needed to understand the human mind. As the analysis ran, the scouts on the ground reported more bizarre behaviors. They found humans who lived in what they called dojos, training their bodies to move with impossible speed and precision. They discovered humans who had mastered the art of stealth, moving through their own cities like ghosts, invisible to the advanced Cthrax sensors. They even found humans who were so obsessed with a virtual game that they had developed an uncanny ability to predict their opponents' movements. These were not the soft, helpless creatures from the initial reports. These were creatures of immense potential and adaptability. On a deeper level, the Cthrax analysts began to unravel the human psyche. They discovered the human's capacity for things like revenge, honor, and sacrifice. These were foreign concepts to the Cthrax, who were driven by a simple, primal urge to hunt. The humans were not just fighting back for survival, they were fighting back for a reason. For the memory of their fallen, for the protection of their kind, for a concept they called freedom. This was a hunt unlike any other. Vashtal leaned back in his command chair, his 4 hands clasped in front of him. The boredom he had felt for so long was completely gone, replaced by a thrilling new fear. The humans were not a species to be hunted. They were a species that had evolved to become a hunter themselves. They had no natural armor, no poison, no claws, because they didn't need them. They used their minds to create weapons that could strike from a distance, strategies that could outwit a more powerful foe, and a resolve that turned them from a vulnerable prey into a terrifying adversary. The Cthrax had come to Earth expecting a feast. But as Vashtal realized, they had just stepped into a trap. And they were no longer the predators. They were the prey. The Cthrax patrol's humiliating retreat was just the beginning. The humans, a species the Cthrax had underestimated to a catastrophic degree, were now on the offensive. They didn't just fight back, they learned. And they learned at a terrifying speed. Commander Vashtal watched in disbelief as his forces, once the feared apex predators of the galaxy, became the hunted. Human scientists and engineers, the very people the Cthrax had dismissed as useless, were now working together to understand the Cthrax bioships and their technology. They analyzed the plasma residue from Krall's body, the strange metals in their armor, and the very composition of their scout vessels. They were reverse engineering the Cthrax's advanced technology with a speed that defied logic. The first major blow came in a remote forest in what the humans called Siberia. A Cthrax scout ship, sent to gather more data on the humans, simply vanished from the radar. Vashtal sent a recovery team, only to find the wreck of the scout ship, its hull torn apart not by plasma blasts, but by crude, explosive devices the humans had planted. It was a simple ambush, something the Cthrax would never have expected from a species with no tactical prowess. But the humans had learned to predict their movements. They had used the Cthrax's own arrogance against them. Vashtal's tactical display, once a map of his glorious conquest, was now a red-streaked testament to human ingenuity. They used their simple projectiles to snipe Cthrax scouts from a distance, using their superior knowledge of the planet's terrain to their advantage. They didn't engage in fair fights, they used guerrilla tactics. They ambushed Cthrax patrols in cramped city streets, where their own agility was an advantage. They used their knowledge of their own world to turn every forest, every mountain, every city into a deadly maze for the Cthrax. The Cthrax, who had always relied on their brute strength and superior technology, found themselves completely out of their element. Their bioweapons were designed for open combat, not for the close quarters, unpredictable warfare the humans excelled at. They couldn't understand why the humans would fight so fiercely for their planet, a fragile rock in a vast galaxy. The concept of home was a foreign one to the Kthrax, who were a nomadic species, constantly searching for new prey. The humans, meanwhile, were just getting started. A new report came in, this time from a Kthrax scout patrol in what the humans called the United States. The patrol had been tasked with observing a large human military base, a place the Kthrax believed would be the perfect hunting ground. But the humans were ready. They used their own advanced technology, which the Kthrax had completely overlooked, to track the Kthrax scout ships. They didn't engage them with ships or weapons. Instead, they sent a signal. A simple code, a string of ones and zeros that the Kthrax translators couldn't comprehend. The Kthrax scout ships, which had always been protected by a powerful shield, suddenly began to malfunction. Their organic computer systems, which the Kthrax believed were impenetrable, were being systematically dismantled by the humans' malware. The humans had found a way to turn the Kthrax's own technology against them. They had created a weapon that wasn't a piece of metal or a blast of energy, it was a thought, an idea, a string of code that could cripple an entire ship. Commander Vashtal watched as the 3 scout ships in the United States plummeted to the ground, their systems failing, their defenses gone. He was no longer a predator. He was a general losing a war to a species he had once considered a harvest. The humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting to win. They had taken the Kthrax's arrogance, their simple hunting instincts, and their technological superiority, and turned it all into their greatest weakness. Vashtal slammed his 4 fists onto the control console, a new emotion coursing through him. It wasn't fear or frustration. It was a chilling realization. The humans were not just a puzzle, they were a mirror. They were a species that had mastered the art of killing not with their bodies, but with their minds. And in a galaxy where every other species ran from the Kthrax, the humans were the only ones who had the audacity to stand and fight. The prey had become the hunter, and the hunter had become the hunted. And Commander Vashtal, the great apex predator, had just realized that for the first time in his life, he was the one in danger.